Greetings everyone, it's time for a video. This one, today I'm going to go and do an oil change on my 2007 Honda Pilot. First things first, this is not a DIY or how-to video. This is just me doing what I do, and I'll show you what I go through, make some comments, and then talk about a few things, and then you can see what I do and understand some of the reasons why I do what I've done. So anyway, I'm going to talk about some oil here in a second first, and then we'll get to it. So hang on a second, I want to go to the shop for this one because there's a couple of things I want to talk about. So before I get into the rest of it, I want to talk about materials and a couple of tools. So for years I've done my oil changes myself, and then when I got a Honda Passport, at this point it's actually been over 20 years, and I started taking, just because of convenience, and the price wasn't bad, I would take my car in to get my oil changed at the dealership. I did that for many years, and then I'd say, I don't know, maybe about 3-4 years ago, I just noticed that, it's probably about 5 years ago actually, just noticed that the quality of the oil change, and I know that seems like a silly thing to say, but just wasn't at the level it used to be. So I kind of got irritated with it and started changing oil myself. Now, what I'm talking about is, for example, on the Passport, there's a skid plate that goes underneath the, covers the bottom part of the engine. And the oil change people, or whoever would change the oil, there's just 2 bolts, and then you slide the skid plate off. Well, they stopped doing that, and then they would just take the oil filter off, and the oil would drain on the inside of the skid plate. And of course, I would assume they would catch it in, proper receptacle before they got rid of it, and that's what they would do. But the oil would get on there, and then it would, when I would drive it, the oil would get on the engine, it would smoke and burn, and it would do this for a while, of course, until it all burned off. Very irritating. And then I've had it once or twice where I'd take my car in, and they didn't tighten the oil pan drain plug right, or maybe they didn't use the right washer, and it would leak a bit, and I'd have to take it back. You shouldn't have to do this for an oil change. They aren't hard. So I started doing them myself, and one of the things, like, started changing my oil myself in the Passport, and years ago, before I was taken to the dealership, I was doing my own, and I used Castrol GTX. So I started doing that again on the Passport, and I noticed after some time, and it didn't really register what the cause was, or what I think the cause was, what appears to be, but my engine started getting noisy. The valves were louder, the rods were louder. It sounded like the engine was really having some problems. And I even took it in once, and they said, no, your engine's got over 200,000 miles on it. This should be what you would expect. I'm like, okay, well, all right, whatever. Meanwhile, we also have a 2007 Honda Odyssey, and I started changing the oil in that as well. And then I remember one day I came in, and my wife drove in carport, and the engine just sounded terrible. And again, though, it didn't register. So I started, I was using Castrol DTX, but that stuff's expensive. Like, if you actually go, I got to go to my local AutoZone, or I can get on the website and find it that way. And I'm paying for a single quart $8, maybe even $9 a quart. And for like an oil change for any of my cars, I'm usually running about 5 quarts for the Odyssey or the Pilot, or I think it's 4.5, so I use 5 quarts. And then I think around 5 for the Passport. I can't recall off the top of my head. And then, well, I mean, okay, we're talking $45. Oh, well, no, I'm sorry. Is that, yeah, $45 for, say, the Odyssey for 9 quarts or 5 quarts of Castrol DTX at $9 pop. Well, that ain't cheap. And then I went back and I remembered. I said, well, this is even more, not including the filter, this is even more than what I would pay to take it in for Honda to do it. So I was really questioning the economics of that, as well as, of course, the convenience. But the economics was not why I started doing my own oil change. So what ended up happening was, I was looking at this oil, and this stuff is a lot cheaper than Castrol GTX or Valvoline or Haviland or Pennzoil. I think Pennzoil is sort of getting a little cheaper, and then STP is really cheap. Like today, I went and I did some price comparison. Just to give you an idea, this stuff is, I bought a case, no coupons, no discount, from my local Honda dealership. I bought a case, $54.99. That runs at roughly $4.50 a bottle or a quart. Okay, well, that's a pretty good deal. I went and looked at AutoZone, and there's their price, I think, for Haviland 5W20, same stuff. Natural oil, though, not synthetic blend, was around $8.96 or something. Again, no coupons or discounts, and you could probably get it a little cheaper. Of course, they do sell the 5-quart bottles, which is kind of better in the packaging plastic, I guess, for the environment, because you have less of this. And that's cheaper, but not noticeably cheaper. I mean, the only thing that ever got cheaper, honestly, was the cheapo STP. And I'm not sliding their prices of the oils or anything like that. I'm just saying, paying less for natural oil is probably not going to be as good. Probably. I mean, you get what you pay for, right? But economically speaking, this stuff is better for me. I mean, it's just cheaper. So I shifted back to this a few years ago. And I started first changing the oil again in the Passport, shifted back. And within 1 month, maybe, I noticed the engine was quieter. And I was like, I didn't really, again, pay it any mind. I remember I shifted from Castrol back to this. And then I did the same thing with the Odyssey. I shifted back. I think I was using Haviland in it. I was just trying something different that was a little cheaper. I think the Haviland's like, for me at least, $7 to $8 a quart. And then I noticed after both engines got quieter, and that's the only way to describe it, less valve noise, the engine just sounded better and smoother. It occurred to me, I said, well, what was the change? I mean, I haven't done anything different. I'm changing the oil, I'm changing the filter, changing my fluids, keeping the maintenance up. What's different? And the only difference is I'm using this oil. Now, for me then, and other people will probably disagree, or maybe they'll say whatever, and that's fine. That's your opinion. And maybe you have evidence for things that work for you. But for me, from a data point standpoint, this synthetic blend from Honda is better. For me, my engines, it's better. And it helps that it's cheaper. Like I said, I got a case, $54.99. I don't know what it's going to be for other dealerships, but that's just one I went to, that I go to normally. And that's why I have it. So my advice, synthetic used to be, synthetic oil's been around a long time. Germany made them in World War II as a way to deal with the fact that they lost the Romanian oil fields to try to continue to have lubricants for their tanks and weapons of war and so forth. We've had synthetic oils for decades, but of course the most well-known is Mobil 1 Synthetic. Their brand was popular. I think, I could be wrong on this, and someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or whatever, that Mobil 1, they used to be recommended for either Mercedes-Benz or BMW or maybe both or something else, maybe Land Rover, I don't know. And you can go buy synthetic blends from other brands, but they're even more money. Like the prices I quoted you was just natural oil, and they're expensive, right? So then my 2 cents about oil. I would say for anyone, I mean, if you want to try it, and you can go to do price shopping and figure out and use whatever you want, but if you're interested, I would say this is worth checking out. If you change your own oils, give it a shot. See what you think. Honda has been putting this in their cars for years. Or when you go to the dealership, you're getting this, unless you ask for something different or bring your own, I guess. But it works for me. And I have my Passport's over 250,000 miles and still running fine. And then the Odyssey just did 180. So this stuff has worked out pretty well for me. Now, let's talk about a couple other things. Filter, just your basic Honda filter. It fits, it works. I don't know who makes this. Honda themselves, of course, doesn't make it. It could be Fram. It could be, I don't know, somebody else. Can't tell you. But they work fine. I don't have any problems with them. And then they give you the crush washer if you ask. They don't charge you for it. At least they didn't for me. Filter maybe a little bit pricier. I think these are around $7 a piece for me. But it's all a wash, I think, in the end. They also give you this. This is called the crush washer. It's I guess it's aluminum, maybe zinc aluminum, some other alloy. It's a soft washer, and the purpose of it is you're supposed to replace it every time you do an oil change. And you pull the drain plug. This is the washer that fits on the drain plug bolt, or the drain bolt, if you will. And what happens is you take it off, you drain your oil, which you'll see in a minute when I do it. And then you're supposed to discard the one that's on there and then use a new one. And if you torque it down properly, what happens is this is soft, relatively speaking, compared to the bolt and the oil pan. And it deforms a bit. So, and then it forms a nice seal so it prevents your oil from leaking. Honda does this. I don't know if other manufacturers do. They probably do. I don't know. So that's about the crush washer. All right. That's the parts. This is basically what you get. Oh, one other point. So Honda has the maintenance binder. They've had it for quite a while. Both my Odyssey and the 2007 Pilot I'm about to do, they have them. They give you a code. They let you know when you need to do maintenance, which is nice. It's very handy. Mine, the code is an A1. If you have a Honda, you can look this up. Of course, you can look up in your manual. You can find it online. It tells you what you're supposed to do. In this case, A1 means just change the oil. Okay, whatever. I think it also means rotate tires too, but I just got new tires, so I don't need to rotate anything. The other one is A2, which is a lot more stuff, but A2 is change the oil in the filter primarily. That's the big one. But I always change my filter for every oil change. I've always done it. I kind of think, okay, maybe you should do it. Honda doesn't seem to think that's important, but that's just my choice. It's probably a little more expensive, a little more wasteful. I think having your filter replaced every time you do the oil is probably important. And it's just my opinion. Other people probably have different thoughts on that, but that's what I do. Let's see. So that's that. Now I'll talk about tools. Briefly, I'm going to cover a couple things here, and then I'm going to go out and we'll cover a lot more. So actually, in the past, what I've done to remove the oil filter is I bought these pliers. I used to struggle. You can get the strap one. It does work. I have one for years, but quite frankly, they're a pain in the neck. These are a pair of Channellocks. I've used them so much the numbers worn off. I think it's 263, maybe 269. Or maybe 266, I don't know. I think 263. So there's two different sizes. They adjust out, and, well, yeah, there's the channels there. So you can kind of do this one hand, but you can see, you can adjust out, and then it's got a channel that, if it locks in, you can go and you can grab. Now, you have to imagine this is on here, and this isn't really, I'll probably adjust this bigger, honestly. But you can see you can grab, and you can use this, like, if it's on the car, go and you twist off. I'll probably do it the other direction though, like this. But they're really handy. I like them a lot. And they work with a bunch of different sizes, so they kind of remove the need for this. But, all right, when I say, and I mean this, meaning, the cup style that fits on and locks in place. I actually just bought this recently. I went for years without having one. And I have some others from the past, but they're the wrong size. They don't fit this. They don't have the right number of flutes, and the diameter isn't correct. So I used these for a long time, and they're great. So if you want to get these, you can find them. They were round. They have two different sizes. This is the smaller size. The bigger size is, well, it's pretty big. It's for big filters. These are handy. I'm not going to use these today. I don't need it because I got this. Now, this is great for taking off, but these things are so powerful, usually what happens when you take it off, you actually crush the filter a bit, so you kind of have to be wary of that. I would not use these to put them on, because you run the risk of crushing the filter, and that's a really bad thing. Don't do that. So what Honda does, let's see if I can show it to you. Might not be able to see. Yeah, okay, there it is. So let's see if I can get it in here. So you see those arrows? There's an arrow there. There's 4 arrows there. There's uncovered up here. There's a 3, and then there's a 2. I know it's kind of hard to see in the glare on the plastic. What Honda says in the service information is when you put the filter on, tighten at 3/4 of turn, or they give you a torque specification of 12 Newton meters. That's pound-feet as well. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. So for years, I used to use the 3/4 turn method, and Honda conveniently has these arrows, and others may do this, I don't know. Honda conveniently has these arrows on here. So what you do is you spin the filter up until it just, the little rubber seal ring, the gasket just contacts the mating surface, and when it just touches, you then go and note, well, where's an arrow? So let's say we got it at 1. Well, you turn it till it's 3 times that. So in this case, we have 1, add 3, you've got, it should stop at 4. So you would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that, according to Honda, provides you with the appropriate amount of torque by hand to seal this up properly, not over tighten, not under tighten. And I've been doing that for years and it works great. But I kind of decided I wanted to try this. I picked this up on Amazon. It's pretty decent. It's stainless steel, pretty solid. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to torque it. I'm also kind of curious whether or not this will match the same location as if you were doing it by hand. So I'm going to compare between the torque versus the other. I'm going to spin it up like I always do, note where it would be, but then I'm going to torque it down properly with this and a torque wrench. So, you know, you can, with Honda, you can do this because they provide that nice convenience. In fact, I think they even have it, yeah, they even have it on here. They even tell you the directions. Sorry for the glare, but they tell you the right steps to do it, which is nice. And again, this is for Honda. If you drive a Honda, you're probably, I know you can get this from the dealership. If you have another car, I mean, you can certainly use oil, but obviously you can't use this. So my other manufacturers may do this. I don't know. I haven't used anything but a Honda filter in many years. They work for me, and they're not out of line price-wise, and I'm guaranteed to have them fit. And like, for example, this filter is the same filter that's used for the Passport, the Pilot, and the Odyssey. And I know that this is also going to be the same filter that works on an Accord at the same time span. So, yeah, they work for me. That's part of it. All right, we're going to go back out. I'm going to cover the rest of the tools, and then we're actually going to get started, and I'll stop yapping. Back in a second. All right, back. Other things that I use, I got my torque specs. I have, let's see, 1/2-inch ratchet, 3/8 ratchet. This is my impact socket I use to take the lug nut off on the wheels, which will explain why I need to take the wheels off, or one wheel off in a second. This is 17 millimeter, use it for the drain plug. I have an adapter that'll make sense in a minute why I do it. I have a wheel lock, so I need to use that. Of course, I have earplugs, safety glasses, gloves. Wear your safety glasses when you do this stuff because, quite frankly, oil falls in your face. It ain't fun. Gets in your eyes. It isn't really not going to be fun. And then, of course, there's other junk that can fall in your face. The reason why I have earplugs is because I use an impact. You need to protect your hearing. Let's see, what else? 3 torque wrenches. I wish I could get away with 2. Honestly, I wish I could get away with 1, but that's just not practical. And the reason is that this is for the big one, the 1/2-inch, is for lug nuts. I guess you could skip doing that if you wanted to over tighten or under tighten. I'm not going to take that risk. 3/8. I use this actually for the drain plug, and then new for me is this 1/4, which I'm actually going to use on this, and that's why I have an adapter. I'm going to use the adapter actually for, if I can get it off, I may have to go get some pliers for that or something. Use this for the torque wrench. So that's why I have that. I don't have a lift, so I have jack stands, and then wheels are chalked, and I have yeah, so that's why I have that. Sorry, I had a brain malfunction for a second there. I have this metal bin. I dump my rags and stuff in that. Do not and this is a rule, do not underestimate the ability of oily rags to combust via spontaneous combustion. That has been scientifically proven. They're very dangerous. I have this metal bin. I just dump them in there, let them dry out, and throw them away. I have two filters. Oil filter for pouring oil in. It's dirt on the outside. I clean it out on the inside before I do it. I have a red filter. I use that to dump the oil from the oil catch pan into my retainer or receptacle for getting rid of the oil, which is over here. Catch pan. Use whatever you want. You can get one that's self-contained. And then I have a container. This holds 12 quarts. So it's about 2 oil changes, then I go and I dump it. Please dispose of oil properly. I do it. Everyone else should do it. You can go to AutoZone, O'Reilly, Advance. They all do it. They all take oil for free. Or at least they do here. And in fact, they're happy to do it. I go to O'Reilly. I have one nearby. I have an AutoZone nearby, but the O'Reilly's a little closer. They let me just walk into the back, and they watch me as I dump it, and then I go, and I'm done. It's worth it to do it. It's kind of stupid not to. Let's see, anything else to cover before we get started? Oh yeah, this thing. So this is called a form. Oh yeah, actually there's 2 things. It's called a form funnel. It's made by a company called Pig. That's right, P-I-G, or at least that's how it's branded. I don't know if it's Pig who makes it. Somehow I found out about this thing some time ago, and just to give you an idea, it bends, and you can form a trough with it. When I need this, it will become very apparent as to why I have it. I think you can find them in various places. I don't remember where I got mine for like $12. They're real handy. You wash it off with soap and water, you're done, and I put it back up. It's handy to have it. As well, I have this, what's called a Pigment. If you ever watched Erico from South Main Auto, you'll see he recommends using these. They're great. They're wonderful for absorbing, picking up oil, gas, other fluids. I have a roll. I picked it up, I think, at Northern Tool for like $15. You can get smaller amounts, but I'm like, why not get the roll? I'm going to use it a bunch. I put it in certain spots, and it helps catch anything that spills out, which is often the case. Of course, I got a rag, another rag, you know, that sort of stuff. So that's about it. Oh, also I have a wheel lock, and I have gloves. Yeah. Anyway, that's about it from what I use. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jack my car up. I'm going to take my tire off. I'm not going to use my impact to pull my wheel lock. I'm going to use my 1/2 inch to break that free, and then I'm going to use the impact on the rest. And then I'll bring you back at that point. Before I forget, there's 2 other things I do. I open, before I drain and before I jack it up, I take the drain plug off. And you don't have to, because there's one other thing I do as well. And then I just put it here, out of the way, and I'll clean it off before I put it back in. The other thing I do is I actually check the oil while it's still level. And I want to see how much, if it's used any, if it's low, because that'll be a sign of a problem. You know, I mean, all cars, all engines use oil. The older they get, the more they use. If there's something mechanically wrong, though, like leaking valve seal, one of your rings is messed up, maybe you're just using more oil because it's just worn out. You want to look and see before you change it so you can get a rough idea of where your oil is at. And if there's a problem, you need to go get it fixed, because the last thing you want to do is mess something up. You could just have a gross outside leak. I've got, this car fortunately does not leak, but the Odyssey has a leak, and it's leaking around the oil pump, and that's going to be a pain in the neck. But next time I change the water pump, the timing belt, or get it changed, I'm not sure I'm going to do it myself. I may take it into the dealership, because that's a pretty hefty job. That will end up being, it'll be done at the same time, because the oil pump is, at least on the Odyssey, is right below the water pump, and it's just, okay, pop it off, there you go, put a new one on. The Passport has a leak at the front. It's near the oil filter. I think it's the oil pressure sensor, but I haven't bothered. It's not a big leak, but it's enough to where I have to pay attention to it. Of course, it stains the driveway and have to clean it periodically. It's very irritating. Anyway, just a couple things. Also, I do it. It depends on the temperature. Like, it's pretty hot today, so I may not run it today. before I do it, I'll usually run the engine for a few minutes just to warm it up a bit so the oil drains a little better. One nice thing about jacking this up is that the drain plug is on the back, right? So it's on the back end, if this is the front, and when I jack up, it actually gives like a little tilt, so it'll drain even more out. And that'll probably come apparent when I get into the car and start doing that part. Anyway, just a couple other things to note of what I do and why I do them. So, take the wheel off, and now here's my filter. Now, and this should explain part of the reason why I take the wheel off when I do this and jack it up. I mean, in theory, somebody said, well, hey, your SUV is so high up, you know, off the ground. Why don't you just get under it, do it without it? Why do you go to all this trouble? Well, technically, that is correct. You don't have to do that. It's about convenience. So in my case, here is the oil filter. Very easy to get to it. I don't have to go get under it and so on. And there's going to be some more stuff that when I get to it, you'll see why it's a big deal. The other reason, of course, is down here somewhere is the drain plug roughly there. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to get to it. It's just convenience. There's no other reason for it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get under and get set up to pull the drain plug and all that. Back in a moment. Okay, under the car, I got my catch pan where I put my Pigment for this one. So here's the drain plug. If I take it off, sorry, I'm going to get you in here. Here's the drain plug. If I'm going to take it off, oil's going to come. It's going to go out quick, so I need to be to where it'll catch. So I have this end here, so it'll catch whatever drops when it gets here. But I put it out further, so when it jets out, and it will jet out, it's going to drop and hit this spot. So that's why I have that. All right, so I'm going to get my wrench, and what I do is, might get the tripod and try to do it and show you. I pop it loose. I just break it free. And one point here I can tell you for a fact, please make sure you loosen the drain plug. You don't accidentally tighten it. You don't want to do that. Don't ask me how I know that. I personally have not done it, but I know other people who have, and it is not a good thing. If you over tighten your drain plug, you've got a real problem. You can over tighten it too much, and you've got a real problem, because when it's time to change the oil, it'll strip and cross thread and you won't be able to get it out. And that's a bad thing. And on some cars, it's a really bad thing because you might have to drop part of the frames. On this one, it's probably not a big deal because this oil pan, you can probably get it out, but other cars, no, not so much. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, you might see some oil here. That's actually not from this. I just had a CV joint, CV axle, drive axle got replaced, and it was leaking grease, and that's what all that's from. That's actually not oil leaking. It's from the grease that's been running down, and necessitated me getting a new axle and putting it on because the inner tie rod was toast. Anyway, so I'm gonna do that, and I'll try to record it and show you when I pop this off and what I do. So give me a second to get that set up. All right, hopefully this thing is set up right. Anyway, so what do? Get it in here. Gotta make sure you're turning counterclockwise. Lefty, loosey. What you're trying to do, make it free. Just like that. That's it. Don't know anymore. I'll start turning by hand, which is good. So, tricky part in this car is you just keep doing it by hand. This is also why I wear gloves. And make sure you got your glasses on. Oh, one other thing. If it's a windy day, really make sure you got your glasses on because oil will blow. And if it blows in your face, it ain't fun. I've had that happen. Fortunately, I have my glasses on. So I push in a bit. The oil is going to start coming out. Don't worry about it. Keep your hand angled away from it. When it starts coming out, pull it. Don't drop this. And then you let it drain. And then the Pigment, I just put the drain plug down, and that is that. So and then it will drain. As you can see, everything's in the pan, which is what you want. Of course, you let it drain, and this is why you make sure that when it's underneath, it's going to fall into the pan. Lift you up so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's falling in the pan. And yeah, so if you want, I mean, you could stop it here because this is pretty much the majority of the oil. I go a little longer. Go get a drink, take a break, whatever. Have your favorite frosty cold beverage. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty much done. At this point, you can go, and I usually wait till it's dripping before I pull it, so or cap it off and think it's done draining. All right, so remember the drain plug. In this case, I need to take the crush washer off. I don't know if you can see it. Probably not, but it's kind of deformed a bit. There it is. I'm going to get you in frame here. It's kind of hard to land on my stomach doing this. But you can kind of see there's a deformation. That's what actually fits inside the drain hole. The bolt, of course, is here. It's coming in, and it's got a flat surface, so it deforms a bit to seal up. So that means you get a new one. You put it on, like so. And when you're done, grab yourself a rag and start screwing back on. Don't worry about the drip. And then hand tighten it. Do not use a power tool for this procedure, ever. I'm sure some pro will disagree. I'm happy they disagree. That's their business. But there's too many stories of people who over-tighten these things, and you got a real problem. Anyway, once it's sealed up, then you got to go grab the torque wrench and torque it. Before you do that, though, I would say the next thing to do, of course, is to get rid of the oil, which I'll try to show you what I'm going to do in a second. Be right back. So I have carefully, underneath the car, slid the oil pan over. I also took my Pigment, put it over here. I got my receptacle, and I got my funnel. Remember my red funnel? Well, that's what I use it for. So I'm going to pick this up and pour it in here. I'm not going to show you that, but you get the idea. All right, as you can tell, oil's been transferred. I'll let it sit there and drain for a bit. See the Pigment, see the spots doing its duty of catching oil spots, and then I wipe the edge of the pan. I'm going to reuse this in a minute when I take the oil filter off, which we're going to get to here in a second. Next thing I got to do, though, is I have to torque down the drain plug. Don't forget to do that. Again, though, do not over-tighten it. I really recommend using a torque wrench for this. If you only use it for one thing, it's this. I'll try to set that up and we can show you that for a second. All right, time to torque it. For my car, and don't use this as a reference, you need to find your own reference, but according to my service manual that I got, it's 39 newton meters or roughly 29 foot-pounds, pound-feet, whichever one you want. Don't over-tighten it. Yeah, torque wrench is long. Might be better doing it from the other way. And that was it. All right, it's good. We'll double check this though when we're come back. Make sure it doesn't leak. All right, now it's time to take the oil filter off. So I got my setup here. Here's my pan. And this, you're like, oh, hey, what's that? That's that green thing. This is the Forma funnel. So in this case, take the funnel off. Well, let me get you in frame here. If I take the funnel off, the oil is going to hit this front cross member or front support part of the frame. Well, I don't want that. It's kind of gross. And then what happens is it kind of blows around. Somebody gets in the engine, it stinks, leak, drips on the ground. Yeah, not so much. So I get this thing, jam it up in there. And from that point, it'll drain into the pan. Nothing will get on it. When I'm done, I can take this thing, wash it off, dry it. It's all good. The other thing is sometimes these things have a tendency to fall out, so I make sure to kind of jam it up in there real good. Anyway, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to use my new handy-dandy oil filter adapter to try to pull it off. This will be a first for me. Anyway, I'll pull that off, and if there's something interesting, I'll show you that. So same thing here. I've already loosened it. It's just like what I do with the drain plug. I just loosen it, and then I start taking it off with my hand. If you already can see, there's some oil beginning to come out around the seal, and it's going to run out. It's okay. It's why you got gloves on. And it's why you also got this thing to catch, and notice it's going to go right into the pan. You can adjust it a bit. Got my Pigment just in case something falls. You can let it drain for a while. It's up to you. I'm going to take it all off, and then I'm going to turn it and dump it in. All right, it's out. It's draining. You see why I have the green thing, because it would fall there. Take my gloves off, letting this thing drain, tipped it over. I'll let this drain out, and then I put it in a plastic bag and throw it away. I don't know if there's any proper disposal you're supposed to do for an oil filter, but old places don't take it. They just toss them. And it should be okay. There shouldn't be a big problem with that. I mean, the oil's going to stay in it and then oxidize, and they'll be in and that. Anyway, that's what I do. There's some other suggestions of what you're supposed to do with it. I haven't found anything about our local laws other than don't get rid of oil. Well, the oil filter, once you dump all the oil out, it shouldn't matter. And what we're going to do with this catch pan is we're going to dump it into my oil container again. I won't show that. There's no point. But that oil also, there's a pretty good amount in here. It needs to go be properly disposed of as well. Anyway, when I get all this off, I will come back and I'll show you when I put the filter back on. All right, this is done draining. I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to put it on a rag, like so. And we're going to go and clean that and let it drain and all that. So we did get a little bit on here. And in fact, I'm going to put this back over here. Got a little bit on the cross member, but most of it didn't end up there. So you go and you wipe it off because, man, you don't want this stuff here. A little bit's okay. Not worried about it. And I'm going to go and put the new oil filter on in a second here. All right, I'm going to put the new oil filter on. I suspect I'm going to block part of the view when I'm putting this on, but first things first, take a little smudge of oil, put it around the gasket like so. You don't need to do a lot, just enough. You can use the oil, it really doesn't matter. All you're trying to do is just get a nice little seal. Thread it on by hand. Now I'm going to go and, purposes of doing this, if I was doing this by hand, the way Honda says, you don't have a torque wrench, you can do it this way. So it hasn't contacted yet. There, it just contacted. So if I was doing it, let's see, let me pull it here so you can see. If I was doing this, I would note that that's the 2. About roughly that spot. You can also use this mark here, which would probably be about 2.5. I don't know, so it's 2, so I'd be 3, 4, and then I'd go to 1. That's where I'd end up at if that was 3/4 turn. So let's see if we end up with this. So that's 2, 3, 4 would be 2 turns. Roll back around to 1, that would be 3/4 turn. Now I'm going to use my torque wrench and do it that way. I've got it, according to service information, it's 12 Newton meters. This is why I need a third torque wrench. I got this teched on because this thing goes up to about 16 Newton meters. My gear wrench only goes down to 15 Newton meters, which isn't low enough. If I'd rather just use 2, but it's the way it is. I got an adapter. It'll work fine. So let's see. Got to keep going. See if I can do this way. That's 4, so in theory, we should hit 12 Newton meters about here. That's a little past it. Or if I got this thing set right. Well, I'm not going to go any further. That's a complete turn. And that is actually probably a little too much according to their information. So, yeah, it's definitely on a little too tight. We will flip this thing off. I may not have it set right. Because normally, that would be where I would do it. So I'm going to go back and have to do some research of this, but I was curious whether or not that thing would match. It didn't. That's kind of surprising. But this is usually what Honda tells you to do right there. So remember, we started at 2, which is over here. 3 would be 1. 4 would be 2 quarters of a turn. 3 is 3/4 of a turn. Or 1 is 3/4 turn, sorry. And that's roughly where it is. I will turn it a smidge more. But that's it. Don't do any more. You don't need to. I've never had these things leak. They've always worked fine when I do this approach. I'm a little surprised that I was doing 12 Newton meters on this and it didn't click. I'm curious to know why. Maybe their service information is wrong. I don't know, because usually this is supposed to end up about right. So maybe it's a little lower. I don't know. Anyway, so now that we got this back, what we do now is I'm going to go and I'm going to dump all this stuff and then set this aside so I can wash it later, the form a funnel. And then I'll probably go ahead and put there's 2 different approaches here. You can leave this stuff off, put in the right amount of oil, right? Because it's 4.5 quarts roughly for a full fill plus a filter. Or you can go ahead and put it down, put the wheel on, torque everything back to normal, which is usually what I do, then fill it up. And then run it for a minute, or usually I fill it up and then I check it when I fill to make sure I'm the right amount. Then I run it and check for leaks. At that point, I'm done. I've never had any problems with that in the past. So that's my approach. So I'm going to go ahead and get this wheel back on. And this is where I need my other torque wrench where I torque down the lug nuts. Sure, you can get away with doing it, not whatever, but I'm going to torque to the right spec because that's what I do. It's probably a drag for most people. Plus, you got to have have a torque wrench just for that. But hey, whatever. It's what I do. Anyway, when I get all this stuff taken care of, I'll bring you back in. All right. Got my got the tire back on. I use the impact. I know this is a controversial subject for some people, but I go and I start my lug nuts by hand. I run them on pretty good distance, and I don't go and use an impact to tighten them up until I've made sure that they're spinning properly by hand. I know that's a controversial subject for some people, not for me though. I do this because I don't want to run the chance of cross-threading a lug nut, which is a really bad thing. So I run these up, and I use my impact actually, once I've got them started, to just take out the slack, so to speak, and make sure it's tightened down. I use a couple of taps, and there it goes where old ugga-duggas. And then that's all I do. And then once I'm done, I lower it. As you can tell, it's lowered. And then I come in with the torque wrench, and according to the manual, 108 Newton meters, which is roughly 80 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm going to do now. And when I'm done with that, I'll be back. Also, if you got a wheel lock like I do, don't use your impact or whatever you have to do it with a power tool to run it up all the way and tighten it up with that. Do it by hand. Yeah, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble because you can strip those things out and then you kind of got a problem at that point. So just a bit of advice. Now it's time to fill. The filter change, it's roughly 4.5 quarts, so I usually put 4 quarts in, and then I put a half, and then I check it after I let it sit for a minute, and I let all the oil run down. Pretty simple stuff. Just crack open a bottle, knob it in, let it drain. Let it sit for a bit longer, and then on to the next one. Hold on, 4.5 quarts in, already put the funnel, check the oil, let it sit there for a bit, put the dipstick back in, put the oil cap back on. Don't forget to do those 2 things. It would be kind of annoying. One other thing that's very important is to check for leaks once you put oil in it. And then when you're going to start it, you're going to come back and check for leaks again. Then usually what I do is after a day or 2 of driving around, I check for oil leaks one more time just to make sure. It's best to catch it early on. All it means you just didn't tighten something up correctly, and that's about it. Now, a couple other points. Here's my little funnel. Washed it off with soap and water. Dried it off. It's ready for the next use. If you use these a bunch, you don't have to bother. Other thing, remember my metal bin? Well, laid the Pigment, the oily rags, lay those out flat. Put my funnels in here. We'll put this over in the corner, away from anything, on the off chance something catches on fire, which is, I've never had happen, but you can have it happen. That is what I do with that. So I'm done with all that stuff. What we're going to do now is start it up, and I'll show you how to reset the maintenance minder. All right, we're in the car, got it on. No oil pressure gauge, which is good. If you notice, my maintenance minder said A1 service, 29 miles. It means I went 20 miles over what they recommend. I usually wait till I go to 0. I know it'll start being irritating because it'll say, oh, you got 5% left, and then maybe 1%, whatnot. Look, go to 0. That's what it's for. So to do it, to reset it, you got the car on. Push the button. You hold it down for 10 seconds. I usually wait, though, because what will happen is it will start flashing, the whole thing. And eventually it'll happen. Boom, there it is. So now you're ready to reset. To do that, you hold it down again until it stops flashing, and the little wrench will go off. And it'll happen any moment. There you go. Reset. So now if you go and you look, we're all live 100%. Everything's good. Don't do that if you haven't done the maintenance. My advice. Of course, you do what you want to, but that's the deal with that. So that's my oil change. I'm going to turn the air on here in a second because it's hot in this car. But like I said, I'm going to go check here in a moment, get underneath and look to see if there's any oil leaks. One thing I would advise is once you tighten everything back up before you put the car back down, if you're doing this on a jack or with a jack on jack stands, get a rag, one of the ones you use, wipe off around the drain plug, wipe around the edge of the oil filter. Make sure everything's clean dry. That way, it's very easy to see if you've got something. You just didn't tighten it up. You thought you did. And that's about it. So that's how I do an oil change. Probably a lot more steps than probably people would normally expect. That's what I do. I will say it's probably a little bit more on the thorough side. I don't like to miss anything. That's what I do. It's a pretty long video, I know. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you like it. If you want, like, subscribe. I'm really curious about comments about people and what they think about some of these things, what their thoughts are. If you like it, you don't like it. If you have disagreements, great. Let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching.